So the series of commands we just ran, we showed how we could use those commands together by using these intermediate files to store the output of each command and then using another command to work on each file. So this works okay, right? You know, we get the output we want, but it's not particularly great. We had to sort of type out 3 different commands and execute them in order, and we had to use 2 sort of temporary intermediate files to store output whilst we were working on them. So this is sort of okay, but there's a much better way of combining multiple commands together in the shell that avoids the need to use these intermediate files in particular. So this relies on the idea of what are called pipes. A pipe essentially allows you to use the output of one command directly as the input to a subsequent command. For instance, where we have these last 2 lines that we just ran, we ran a sort and then stored the contents in sorted length, and then we used head to retrieve the first line of sorted length.txt. We can skip the need to use the intermediate file by piping from sort into head. The pipe character here is this vertical bar. I'll just give you a second to look on your keyboard where to find it, because it may not be one you're used to typing very often. So we type out the sort command that we used before, and this vertical bar, also known as the pipe, and then we type out the head command that we used before, but there's no need to provide the file name here. So what we're saying here is take the output of sorted length.txt and use this as the input to the head command. If we execute this, then we get the expected result, which is the combination of those 2 commands run separately, but we skipped the need to create an intermediate file that stored the output. You can chain any number of commands together using a pipe, so we can actually run our whole set of commands that we were working with before. So we can run wc-l star.pdb, pipe that into sort-n, and then pipe that into head-n1. Hit return to execute that, and we get the output of the whole analysis, no intermediate files, and it's all just one line that we type at once. So this combining of commands together is, you can think of it a little bit like nesting mathematical functions, if that sort of analogy suits you well. But the important thing is just this notion that almost all, or at least a large number of programs that work in the shell will accept this input via a pipe, and the output of any command can be used as the input into a pipe as well. So just a little bit of technical terminology that you might come across in the context of both redirection and pipes. That is this notion of standard input and standard output. So whenever you run a command in the shell, it has the option to read input from what is called the standard input, and any output that it creates is placed in what's called the standard output. So for instance, when we run wc-l star.pdb, we say that the output of the wc command was printed to standard output. By default, standard output is attached to the terminal, to the screen in which you are running your shell. When we use redirection, for instance, if we place the greater than symbol here, we say that the standard output of wc has been redirected to length.txt. I'm not going to execute this. If we go back and we add in a pipe sort-n, Now, the WC command is not reading any information from standard input, and we are using a pipe here to join together the standard output of WC with the standard input of sort. So we now say that sort is going to be reading from standard input, and that's that's the channel through which it receives the data that it is going to work on. So most of the time you can sort of not worry about the standard aspects of standard input and standard output, and just think of these as input and output to the various commands you use. And this is a separate way that commands can receive information to work on besides the arguments that are provided on the command line. So it's really quite difficult to emphasize how important this notion of using pipes is. It's really sort of fundamental to the reason that the shell is such a powerful environment. So because we have these set of commands, all of which are able to communicate to each other through standard input and standard output via these pipes, we have this opportunity to chain these commands together to produce more complex behaviors. So this makes up one aspect of what's called the Unix philosophy. It's part of the reason why we still talk about the Unix shell today, and why it's been such a sort of persistent environment that programmers like to work in, which is this notion that you should have lots of individual commands that perform one simple function. For instance, the WC command is just good for telling you information about the number of lines or words in a file. The sort command is just good at sorting. And the head command is good at only reporting a subset of a file. By having all of these individual commands that focus on just doing one thing, but the ability to combine them together, you have a very flexible and powerful way of defining your own series of commands, combining them together with pipes in order to produce a custom output. And because each command only focuses on doing one thing, it can be really good at it, which means it can be fast and it can have lots of custom options.